Okay, dads and sons, we saw in the first video that we're all leaders, that God wants all of us to be leaders, and we said that we're going to be learning some lessons for leadership because it's going to take practice. We're going to have to form some habits in our lives to be good leaders, and we might as well start now. So the first lesson is really the most important lesson, and that's what we're going to talk about today. And it has to do with this question. Here's the question. What are you leading people to? If you're a leader, boys, if you're supposed to be leaders, dads, if you're supposed to be leaders, the first question we want to answer is, well, what are we leading people to? You know, there's a lot of ways to be a leader. There's a lot of things to lead people to, but what's the most important thing? And here's what we learn in the Bible. Here's the first thing I want us to know, is that we should lead people to follow Jesus. That's the most important lesson, is all the things we can lead for, all the ways we'll lead in life, for sports, for school, in every arena, in every area of our life. The most important thing we need to remember is that we lead people to follow Jesus. Let's take a look at Luke chapter 9 and look at what it says. There were a bunch of people, some of the followers of Jesus were walking along the road, and a guy comes up to Jesus and said, "Hey, I'm going to follow you wherever you go." And Jesus said this, "Foxes have dens and birds have nests, but the Son of Man has no place to lay his head." And then he said to another guy, "Follow me." You know, Jesus was always saying this to people. He was always inviting people to follow him. And hopefully you have followed Jesus. Hopefully you've come to a place, sons, fathers, I hope you've led your kids to follow Jesus. And I hope they know that. And this is something we always need to remember. This is the most important thing we can do as leaders, is lead people to follow Jesus. Here's the second thing we need to understand, is it's not about how great you are. Leadership isn't about you becoming great. It's not about making a great name for yourself or having a plaque on the wall or having a bunch of trophies. Leadership is not about you. It's about Jesus. Look at what John the Baptist said in John chapter 3. There were a bunch of people were following John the Baptist. He was a pretty popular guy. A lot of people loved him. A lot of people wanted to be around him. He was a great leader. But look at what he says in verse 30. He's talking about Jesus. He's saying, Jesus is more important than me. And he says this in verse 30. He says, Jesus must become greater. I must become less. That needs to be our attitude. Boys, dads, Jesus must become greater. We must become less. Sometimes if you're a leader and if you've got a lot of leadership, natural leadership skills, it's real easy to start thinking it's about you and you think you're great, but it's not about how great you are, because your goal is to lead people to Jesus, not to you. And so really the last thing we need to say about it is it starts with you following Jesus. You can't lead someone to follow Jesus if you aren't following Jesus yourself. Paul said it like this in 1 Corinthians 11. He said, "Follow my example as I follow the example of Christ." So Paul didn't just say, "Hey, follow my example." He says, no, he says, "Follow me because I'm following Jesus." And so I encourage you, dads and sons, think about it. Are you following Jesus? Do you know what it means to follow Jesus? Dads, I encourage you to go to that Red Notes website and click on the Foundations link and lead your kids through Foundations or Foundations through Foundations for Kids to make sure that they are following Jesus. But let's remember this most important lesson, that we're leading people to follow Jesus.